Thanks, guys. We've got Grace Sharkey here. She's one of our authors on our editorial team. And Grace, you just dropped a story this morning talking about capacity as a service. And thank you for joining us first off on FreightWaves Now this morning. Let's talk a little bit about that story, talking about that shift towards capacity as a service.
Yeah, right now, clearly carriers are making money left and right? So for me, I really wanted to dive into, okay, what are they spending this on? I think Zach actually wrote about this a couple weeks ago. You're not really seeing it too much in the truck order data. So where's all of this investment going? And what I've really been finding is that carriers are taking the time to really focus on investing in ways to help customers in different areas of shipping that's not just using their physical trucks, right? Like being able to uh, sell a service like Final Mile, which can be very difficult, but with working with companies like Baton, carriers can do it easily. Or if they're focusing more on just optimizing their own fleet, that right there is going to allow them to take more capacity and shipments from their customers. So I think it's really interesting to see carriers finally taking this profit and really investing it in areas that's going to help them scale their business as they grow, but also scale with their customers, right? Like no customer wants to give a very strong lane from a specific supplier or end consumer just to a company with one truck. They want to know that you're able to take more volume, or if things arise, that you're able to take a little bit more of take a little bit more freight within different areas of the country, or be able to warehouse if something was to go awry. So I'm really interested in seeing how carriers continue to expand their services over time instead of just relying on that one product, which is their actual truck.
Right. And so on Monday's show, I don't know if you caught it, Grace, or if you caught it as well. We talked to Nicole from Candor Expedite, and she talks about like the whole white glove service. And they do a lot of like hotshot, like specialty freight, and talking about how it's really kind of about the quality of the service that you're giving. But you also have to marry that with the quantity of your ability to give service. Is that kind of what we're talking about here with these carriers? They're wanting to say, hey, we've got this capacity to give you, but we also want to give you this at top-notch standard.
Exactly, right? Because if you bring on a customer, let's say they're a small or medium-sized business, but at some point they want to be able to tell their customers, "Hey, we can actually help put the product together once it gets to your doorstep, Kaylee." Then they're able to offer that, and that's this whole point: is to be able to get a customer right and grow with them over time. And carriers, I think, have been so used to just maneuvering around, especially lately, the spot market. Well, okay, we've learned how to use data, we've learned how to use technology in order to position ourselves correctly. Now let's make sure that we're able to scale as these opportunities come to us.
Hey, Grace, this is Andrew, by the way. Thanks for joining us. This is an interesting idea, especially on the carrier side. You're talking about expanding services and having more expertise in different types of service offerings, but you're seeing kind of the opposite from the public logistics providers. XBO, they're looking to spin off GXO and trying to get that higher multiple as a pure play. I just wanted to know, do you see any difference there? Is there a dichotomy emerging here between carriers and logistics providers, or is this something that we're going to see logistics providers do as well, trying to add more services beyond what their niche is?
That's a really great point, and that's something I was wanting to kind of touch on in this, but didn't want to go on a tangent. I think it's something that they will eventually catch on. I think that you're going to see kind of this segmentation, like you're seeing with XPO. But what's really going to happen is you're going to have to offer more as a brokerage to both your customer and your carriers, right? It's really that kind of digital experience that you're seeing out of companies like Uber or even Flock, right? Like there is an extra service that we're giving you. We're not just trying to help you get your shipments from point A to point B. There are other things, other services that we can provide you within what our traditional service could normally be. So what I think is interesting and why I really wanted to touch on this is because I think in the past carriers have relied on logistics companies to kind of fuel that for them. So this is the first time where they are personally taking it into their own hands, and almost leapfrogging the logistics companies on that.
Grace, this reminds me of a conversation I had with Dennis Anderson of ArcBest, the Chief Customer Officer. I had him on Point of Sale a couple weeks back, and we were just talking about how, ArcBest going from what was just an LTL brand, 15, 20 years ago, they have done this. They have added more services through acquisition or through, just building out the service itself, and now they are a truly diversified logistics provider that can help with pretty much any of your needs. But they still have those assets to leverage, and that is like an important point to him. He says when customers are coming, and especially now when capacity is so tight and people are looking for any source of it, they go to the logistics providers that do have assets to leverage. So, looking at an Uber Freight, looking at some of these digital players that don't own assets, that are running, a very asset-light model, do you see them getting into assets in this type of investment, or is this, from the opposite side, the asset-heavy people getting into some of the more technology, adding services in that manner?
I think it's gonna, for those type of companies, I think it's gonna be sticking to straight on that digital side, but more than likely creating a more progressive platform for the carrier, right? So instead of saying, hey, carrier, don't invest in this personally, invest in us as your provider of these services. But, it's like you look at, I think I put in the article too, JB Hunt, right? Like they've been doing this for quite some time. Like, yeah, we've had the assets, but watch as we grow this 360, bring in a bunch of carriers to help with this overflow. And now there's a number of extra services, the cold chain that they just announced that we can add on to that as well. So I see some of those digital players just really promoting their suite more, less on the shipper side, which they've normally done, but just more on the carrier side is like, no, don't take that investment money, come over here. We will do that for you.
So speaking of those digital players, you just dropped another article about Uber Freight and its announcement of what's going on in Canada, especially on that shipper side. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so they launched in Canada in 2019, and they've been matching shipments for their customers manually, right, through actual individuals. They wanted to build up their carrier base before they added this carrier matching tool, which is incredibly smart, especially I think in that market. Canada is a lot less fragmented. It's not as the population is more dense, so it's smart for them to, I think, build up a strong carrier base that can allow for that quick 1 second tendering. And so now they've built up that base and they're able to actually give out the shipper platform that we've had in the United States for some time.
And so using that new shipper platform, that's going to make their cross-border freight especially easier, right?
Yeah. And that's really what they're focusing on now, is building those actual relationships, because that I have done that before. And especially if you're not working with the right carriers, that can be very hard to maneuver. So it sounds like they're well on track for that, though. So I'm excited to see how that cross-border up north goes for them.
Hey, Grace, do you know if Uber has the same plans for the southern border? Have they been looking at Mexico for expansion as well?
I do not, and that's something I will dive into that for you. I'll figure that out, Andrew.
Grace, give us a little sneak peek. What else do you have coming up soon on FreightWaves.com?
Yeah, so I'm working on a couple of really fun driver stories for this weekend, just different Memorial Day events and fundraising events that they have going on. We have a lot of military veterans in this community, so it's always great to see what they do around this time of the year, 4th of July as well. So I'm focusing on a lot of that, and clearly diving into technology and figuring out this answer for Andrew, because this is something I was interested in too. So hopefully next time I'm on, I will have that for you guys.
It seems like a natural expansion is all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. So we'll figure that out.
Awesome, Grace. Thank you so much for joining us today. Catch her on Transmission on Tuesdays with Sebastian Blanco. As she likes to say, she nerded out about their last episode and then went on this massive article write about semiconductors. So awesome content from Grace Sharkey. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, Kaylee.